"There's a camera in your office," the boy whispered, his voice barely louder than the hum of the air conditioner. "But it ain't yours." James Harper froze his fingers, hovering over the keyboard. The soft clack of keys cut off the mid-sentence. Afternoon sunlight poured through the tall windows, glinting off polished walnut shelves, and the blue flicker of his workstation. But no warmth reached the space between them. Not after those words. He turned slowly as if the air had turned to molasses. Ethan stood half hidden in the doorway, his small hands gripping the edge of the mahogany desk like it was his only tether to the world. "Ethan James," said his voice careful. Too careful. The 12-year-old looked up, dark eyes, wide shoulders, hunched and stepped closer. His worn sneakers whispered on the thick rug. His voice dropped lower as he leaned in close enough for James to feel his breath. "It's behind the painting," he said, "the one Miss Olivia brought." James blinked. In the 6 months since the crash took Ethan's parents, James's brother and sister-in-law, the boy had barely spoken more than a sentence at a time. He watched. He listened. He clung to the edges of rooms like a shadow pressed against the wall. James had given him everything: the best schools in Atlanta, a private therapist, a bedroom full of soft lights, books, and tech gadgets. But he hadn't earned this. He hadn't earned this kind of trust from Ethan. "What do you mean, a camera?" he asked. Ethan glanced at the painting, a muted abstract of a city skyline hung just above the bookshelf. "I saw it blink at night," he said. "I scanned it. The signal don't match any of your gear." James's stomach tightened. "Scanned it." Ethan nodded. "Used my tablet. Ran a network trace when I couldn't sleep." James leaned back, studying the boy in silence. Ethan, the quiet, watchful kid who barely spoke to adults, had just told him something his $1 million security team missed. "And he wasn't even supposed to be in here. How long you known about this, Ethan?" "Since last week," he said, voice small but steady. "But I wasn't sure you'd believe me." James's throat tightened. Olivia had hung that painting 4 weeks ago. She'd called it a gift to celebrate his deal with Homeland Security. She'd kissed him right beneath it, whispered she was proud of him. They'd shared wine-poached salmon while it watched from the wall. He stood across the room with slow steps and lifted the canvas from its hooks. It came away easily, revealing smooth drywall, and just below the molding, a black dot no bigger than a pencil eraser. A lens. A hidden camera. His jaw locked. "Ethan, step outside for a minute," he said quietly. "No." The firmness in Ethan's voice stopped him. It wasn't defiance. It was courage. The boy was holding on to something: information, maybe fear, and he wasn't leaving. James nodded slowly, motioning him closer. "All right, sit." Ethan perched on the edge of a leather chair, hands clasped in his lap. He didn't fidget, didn't squirm, just looked at James with eyes too old for a kid his age. "I checked the signal history," he said. "It started when Miss Olivia hung the painting. But there's others now, smaller ones. In the living room, the den. I think someone's listening to you." A chill crawled up James's neck. He stared at the wall where the painting had been, his mind racing through the past month. Olivia's sudden interest in his schedule. The way she lingered near his desk, insisting on tidying his office herself. Her habit of showing up with coffee just when he needed it, always at the perfect moment. The coincidences weren't coincidences anymore. Ethan waited, watching his face. James turned to him. "You've been carrying this alone." Ethan nodded once. James let out a long, unsteady breath. "I believe you," he said. Ethan blinked, looking uncertain for the first time. "You do? I should have believed you the second you said it." The corners of Ethan's mouth didn't move, but his shoulders softened, and that said everything. James reached for the painting again. The camera was embedded in the frame's curve, so small it could have been decorative. But it wasn't. It was deliberate. It was betrayal. "And if Olivia planted one, how many more were out there, Ethan?" he said, voice low. "I need you to keep watching, but only if you feel safe. Can you do that?" Ethan nodded. James rested a hand on his shoulder. "From now on, we do this together. No more secrets." Ethan looked up, and for the first time since he'd come to live with James, he smiled. Not a polite smile. The kind that meant someone was finally listening. James Harper sat in his darkened office, the glow of his monitor casting sharp shadows across his face. The clock read 5:47 p.m. Olivia would be home in 25 minutes. He knew her routine like code: leave her boutique consulting firm at 5:30, stop for a decaf latte 2 blocks away, and walk through the front door at 6:12, give or take a second. She'd hang her coat on the antique hook she'd insisted on installing, smile and call out, "Missed you, babe," with a kiss that tasted of lavender and lies. Today, though, everything had shifted. James stared at the painting on the floor, its frame cracked from where he'd torn it down. The camera lens stared back, lifeless but damning. Ethan sat cross-legged on the sofa's far-end tablet on his lap, fingers swiping through signals James's state-of-the-art system hadn't flagged. "How many?" James asked, eyes still on the painting. "5 that don't belong," Ethan replied, voice steady. "2 in your office, 1 in the living room, 1 in the guest bedroom, and—" He hesitated. "1 in your master suite." James inhaled slowly through his nose. Not anger, not yet. This was calculation, cold and sharp. "You see them transmitting?" "Yeah." "I mapped their activity. They're quiet during the day, but from midnight to 4 a.m., they go active in short bursts. Someone's collecting data in batches." James muttered, "Packet transmission, staying off network crawlers." He rubbed his jaw. This wasn't amateur work, not a private eye or a tabloid hack. This was high-level surveillance, the kind his company Sentinel Tech was built to stop. And it was happening under his roof. He rose crossed to the tall oak cabinet on the wall. A fingerprint scan and a silent keypad swipe opened the panel, revealing a matte black server tower humming softly. He plugged a secondary cable into Ethan's tablet, connecting it to the diagnostic port. "You're in," he said. Ethan looked up, startled. "You're giving me access, I trust you," James replied. "More than my own damn firewall." Ethan's eyes widened, but he didn't smile. He nodded and got to work. As he traced signal paths through digital noise, James returned to his desk, pulling up the central security dashboard. Every camera mic and access log since the system's installation lit up like a digital nervous system. Olivia had limited access, of course, but that hadn't stopped her from adding her own devices. He scrolled through motion logs. A few entries stood out: movement in the guest bedroom. Wednesday night, the living room at 3 a.m. last Sunday, and 1 log with no source signature. Blank. Whoever planted these didn't just want to spy. They wanted to do it without fingerprints. A knock at the door jolted them both. "Sir," a voice called. James exhaled, opening the door for Clara, his longtime housekeeper and family friend. Her silver hair was pulled tight, her blouse crisp, but her eyes narrowed when she saw his face. "Something's wrong," she said, not asking. "Yeah," James replied. He gestured her inside and closed the door softly. Ethan didn't look up, too deep in code, his face glowing with reflected light. James leaned in, voice low. "Olivia might have planted surveillance devices. Ethan found them." Clara blinked once. "Where?" "Everywhere." Her face hardened. "I knew she was off, always lingering, knows too much. And she talks to that CFO of yours too often." James turned sharply. "Henry?" Clara nodded. "He came by twice last week when you were out. Said it was for paperwork. Olivia acted like it was nothing, but I heard them whispering in the den. She didn't know I was listening." James's pulse ticked up. Henry Carter, his best friend since college, his right hand. Could he be involved? He didn't let himself finish the thought. "Thanks for telling me," he said. "I need you to do something. Anything. When Olivia gets back, act normal. Like we know nothing." Clara's mouth tightened. "I've been playing polite longer than she's been breathing. I can handle it." James gave a short nod. Ethan's voice cut through the room. "I found something." Both adults turned. "There's a signal hub. All the devices route to it, but it ain't here," he said. "It's off-site somewhere downtown Atlanta." James moved beside him, studying the map Ethan had generated. A red pulse blinked on a building tied to a small private storage firm with no clear affiliation. "Whoever's behind this is good," Ethan murmured. "They don't transmit constantly. It's like data shadows, tiny slivers hard to trace." "And you traced it," James said. Ethan shrugged. "I learned from watching you." Before James could respond, the front door opened and closed softly. Footsteps. Olivia's laugh floated down the hall, warm, familiar, rehearsed. James shut the server panel smoothly, locking Ethan's tablet in a drawer with the boy's quick cooperation. Clara straightened her skirt, gave Ethan a brief nod and headed to the main hall, her face composed again. James, Olivia called. "Where you at, babe, in the office?" he said, stepping toward the doorway. Ethan slipped to the side hallway, just as Olivia appeared, arms full of takeout bags, a bottle of wine peeking from her purse. "There's my genius," she said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. He let her. She glanced around. "Smells like server heat in here." "You working hard or hardly working?" He smiled tightly. "Just running diagnostics. Few glitches in the system." Olivia paused, her eyes scanning the room with that playful curiosity he'd once found charming. "Anything serious?" "Not really," he said, "but I'll probably do a full reset later." "Need help?" "No," he replied. "You've helped enough." She laughed. "If I didn't know better, I'd think that sounded shady." He didn't answer. She set the food down, stretched slowly, deliberately comfortable. Too comfortable. James watched her a beat longer, noting how her hand grazed the desk's edge right above the drawer, holding the one thing she didn't want him to find. "Let's eat before it gets cold," she said, turning. "I'll be out in a bit," he replied. She blew him a kiss and walked off, humming a tune that didn't match her cold eyes. When the door closed, James sat slowly, hands pressed together, his temple throbbing. He didn't want this to be true, but it was. He felt it beneath her affection, her perfect timing, her fake sweetness. She was watching him, using him, and she wasn't alone. Ethan stepped out from the shadowed hallway. "Uncle James," he asked. James turned. "Can I help with the reset later?" James stared at him, then nodded. "You already are." The house fell still again, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. But in that stillness, James Harper was no longer the hunted. He was the hunter. James Harper sat in his office long after midnight, the faint scent of Olivia's lavender body oil lingering like a ghost. The wine she'd brought home sat untouched on the kitchen counter, the takeout cold. Neither he nor Ethan had an appetite after what they knew and what they still didn't. Ethan was cross-legged on the floor by the server cabinet, a blanket draped over his shoulders. The glow of a secondary monitor reflected off his round glasses, his fingers flying over the keyboard, silent and focused, dissecting data packets even junior engineers would have missed. Clara had brought them chamomile tea earlier, saying nothing. Her look as she closed the door spoke volumes. "I've seen women like her before." "You're not crazy. Keep going." James leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He'd been trained to spot patterns, neutralize threats, build defenses, tighter than a vault. Yet Olivia had slipped through. She'd used him, used this house, used Ethan. His fist clenched. "Got something?" he asked, voice low. Ethan's eyes lit up, voice charged. "I mapped her cloud activity. Not her personal account, she's too smart for that. But the devices she planted synced to a private server offshore, masked behind a shell company in the Caymans." He clicked through tabs. "Here's the IP trace." I cross-checked it with known activity logs. He pulled up a dataset James knew well, prototype access logs from his system blueprints, algorithm test results, beta encryption routines. "This is yours," Ethan said. "And this," he tapped another tab, "is where it ends up." James stared at the second screen, heart pounding. The Orion Systems Interface, proprietary, internal, confidential. The watermark in the corner was unmistakable. Olivia wasn't freelancing. She was a corporate spy working for his biggest rival. "How the hell?" James muttered. "I built firewalls to stop nation-states." Ethan glanced up, voice softer. "She got in because you trusted her, not because she outcoded you." James didn't respond. The truth hit like a brick. Ethan was right. The breach hadn't come through the network. It had come through the heart. "Is Henry in on it?" he asked, almost dreading the answer. Ethan hesitated, then opened a video file. "It's grainy," he said, "but it's enough." The footage, time-stamped 3 nights ago, showed the living room from a bookshelf angle James hadn't authorized. Olivia entered first, carrying a thin silver case. Moments later, Henry followed, glancing over his shoulder like a man not sure he was alone. Olivia opened the case, pulled out a USB drive. Henry said something, no audio, but his posture screamed confidence, familiarity, impatience. She handed him the drive. He nodded, tucking it into his blazer. Then they embraced. Not like friends, like co-conspirators. James leaned back, swallowing hard. I need air. He stepped onto the back deck, the cold biting deeper than expected. The sky was clear stars sharp as needles. The pool lights shimmered untouched. 6 months ago, he'd adopted Ethan, hoping to give him safety, stability, a home. Instead, Ethan had protected him, watching when James was too busy playing guardian. The sliding door creaked behind him. Uncle James Ethan's voice was small. James turned. You should be sleeping. Ethan stepped out barefoot, pulling the blanket tighter. Couldn't. James crouched, hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, he said softly. You shouldn't have to carry this. I wanted to tell you sooner, Ethan's voice cracked, but I didn't want you to think I was messing things up. I saw you smile when Miss Olivia was here. You laughed. I thought maybe you'd think I was trying to break that. James closed his eyes. The pain wasn't from betrayal. It was from knowing a 12-year-old had silenced himself for James's sake, choosing his uncle's happiness over his own safety. Nobody should ever ask you to do that, James said, pulling him into a hug. Least of all me. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then muffled against James's shoulder, asked, What now? James pulled back, looking him in the eye. Now we flipped the game. They went inside colder but clearer. James opened a hidden desk drawer, pulling out a secure, unregistered phone used only for emergencies. He dialed a number from memory. Leon, he said when the line picked up. I need you. The voice on the other end was clipped ex-military. Time and place. Tonight. Here. Quiet surveillance. No uniforms. Understood. He hung up. Ethan tilted his head. Who's Leon, old friend? Private security. He's handled dirty corporate jobs before. James's voice was low measured. We'll give Olivia and Henry what they want. Let them think they're getting everything. But we'll control what they take. Ethan's eyes lit with understanding. You want to feed them fake data? Exactly. And while they're celebrating, we'll be recording everything. James opened the company's prototype interface, crafting fake build logs, misleading algorithm structures, and backdoor-laced software packages. Ethan helped inserting trigger codes to log every machine accessing the files. Clara returned with a tin of oatmeal cookies and a mug of cocoa. You two look like you're gearing up for war, she said, setting the tin down. We are, James replied. She didn't flinch, just poured the cocoa, handed Ethan a cookie, and said, Then you'll need sugar. It was nearly dawn when James finished the decoy server. Ethan had nodded off in the armchair, tablet still on his chest. James looked at him, blanket draped over his small frame, and something inside shifted. This wasn't just about stopping Olivia or protecting trade secrets. It was about protecting the kid who'd protected him when he wasn't looking, and making damn sure the people who used this family as a battlefield never got another shot. He dimmed the lights, glanced at the hallway where Olivia slept, and whispered to the silence, You have no idea who you're messing with. The sun rose behind a thick veil of winter, clouds casting James Harper's estate in muted gray. Olivia padded into the kitchen in James's navy robe, humming softly, as if the night before hadn't shattered their world. She poured coffee, added almond milk, she always kept it stocked, and sat at the island scrolling her phone like any fiancée starting her day. But James saw it now. The controlled movements, the too casual posture, the way she positioned herself by the window perfectly aligned with one of the hidden cameras they'd found. Every gesture was a performance. He entered the kitchen wordlessly in a charcoal sweater, and jeans, his face unreadable. Morning, love, Olivia said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Sleep okay? Eventually, James said, opening the fridge. You seemed tense last night. She sipped her coffee. Everything all right at work? Just thinking through some problems, he said evenly. But I've got a solution now. Her smile sharpened, sensing a shift. Good. I'd hate for anything to ruin the holidays. She leaned in for a kiss, but James turned slightly, offering only his cheek. She hesitated just a blink, then laughed. Grumpy morning, man noted. James checked his watch. I'm heading into the city for meetings. Might be gone all day. Want company? Not today? He saw it a flicker in her eyes. Disappointment or recalculation? All right, she said. I'll catch up on reading. Maybe take Ethan shopping. Ethan's staying in. He's working on a project. Olivia nodded too quickly. Sure, maybe we'll bake something later then. James gave a faint smile and left, but he didn't go far. From the garage, he circled to the guest house out back where Leon and his two-man security team had set up a mobile command station overnight. Cables snaked across the hardwood, feeding thermal monitors, audio interceptors, and video logs. Leon, graying and built like a linebacker who never retired, nodded as James stepped in. "She's up," he said. Her phone pinged a connection to that offshore server at 6:12 a.m. "She's tracking your movements, mapping your patterns." "What about Henry?" Leon turned his monitor. "Just booked a one-way ticket to D.C. Leaves tomorrow. No luggage, no return flight. This thing's coming to a head." James stared at the screen. "It ends today." Leon crossed his arms. "You sure you're ready? I'm not the one who needs to be ready." He glanced at the second monitor where Ethan sat at his desk in his room, hoodie pulled tight, typing like his life depended on it. In a way it did. Back in the main house, Olivia paced the hallway, speaking softly into her phone. Her voice dripped sugar. "I'm telling you, he's acting different," she whispered. More guarded. A pause. "No, not yet. I need more time. He's still building that neural mesh, and I need the latest framework before we extract." Another pause. "I'll get it. He trusts me." She ended the call and turned startled to find Ethan standing there. She forced a smile. "Hey, kiddo. Didn't see you." Ethan didn't smile back. "Uncle James said I should work in my room today." Olivia crouched slightly, her voice syrupy. "Smart move. You're such a bright boy, Ethan." The words sounded patronizing, laced with a subtle jab. She didn't believe a kid like him, black and young, could be a threat. Ethan's eyes didn't blink. "You gonna be here when he gets back?" The question was quiet but landed like a slap. "Of course," Olivia said, straightening. "Why wouldn't I be?" Ethan nodded and walked away. In the command trailer, James watched the exchange on a split screen. Leon shook his head. "Kid's got more steel than half my team. He's been through worse than most adults," James said, "and he's still here looking out for me." By mid-afternoon, James returned home claiming he forgot his laptop. Olivia greeted him with open arms, but he sidestepped the hug, heading straight to the living room. He opened his laptop, pretending to log into work. Every keystroke, every call that day was part of the trap. At 4:02 p.m., he sent a dummy file labeled Sentinel Neural AI Prototype. Final to his desktop and accidentally left it open while stepping away for a call. Olivia, reading on the couch, didn't hesitate. The moment he vanished into the kitchen, she sprang up, pulled her phone, and scanned the screen with a sleek, military-grade device James hadn't seen before. It transmitted the file in under 20 seconds. Leon's voice crackled in James's earpiece. She took the bait. "Sent it all to the Cayman node," Copy James whispered. The real coup came 15 minutes later. Henry walked in through the back entrance, claiming a meeting with James. Olivia, not expecting him so early, panicked briefly, just long enough. "Why are you here?" she hissed. "We need to move the timeline," Henry said. "He's slipping. You said tomorrow. I don't care. I want it now." Ethan, tucked in a hallway nook, recorded every word on his tablet. James waited 2 more minutes, then stepped back into the room. Olivia and Henry turned their smiles plastered on in panic. "Didn't know we had guests," James said. Henry cleared his throat. "Just dropping by. Thought we could catch up. Thought you were flying to D.C. tomorrow." Henry blinked. "Who told you that?" James didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the bar, poured a drink. "To catching up," he said, raising his glass. Olivia's voice was too cheerful. "Actually, Henry was just leaving." "No," James said, calm. "He can stay." He gestured to the living room chairs. "Both of you sit." Something in his tone made them obey. Leon entered seconds later with 2 men in civilian clothes, subtly armed. Olivia rose immediately. "What is this?" "Sit," James said, motioning her down. "We're having a conversation. Long overdue." He turned to the wall monitor, tapped a button. The screen lit up with footage, Olivia transferring files, Henry receiving them, her whispering on the phone. Olivia's face drained of color. Henry stiffened. "You bug me?" she asked. "No," James said. "You bug me? I just found your bugs first." Silence stretched. "You don't understand," Olivia said, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to fall for you. It was just a job." "So you loved me?" he asked. "I think so. Maybe. But I had no choice." "You had every choice," James cut in. "You walked into my home, slept in my bed, lied to a kid." He turned to Henry. "And you after everything I did for you." Henry stood slowly. "James, let's not make this something it's not." No, James's voice was sharp. It's treason. Leon stepped forward, reading their rights. As they were let out in cuffs, Ethan stepped into the room, watching silently. James turned to him. You okay, Ethan? Looked at him. You okay, James? Crouched, pulling him close. I am now. As the front door closed behind the traitors, James knew this was only the beginning. Justice had spoken, but trust would take time to rebuild. And deep down, he sensed a bigger fish still lurking in the shadows. The Atlanta skyline glowed with dawn's first blush, but inside Sentinel Tech's headquarters, the air crackled like a storm was about to break. James Harper stood on the rooftop, his suit jacket fluttering in the cool morning wind, a tablet in hand glowing faintly with a live trace protocol. The digital bait, a fake breakthrough in predictive AI algorithms, had been sent hours ago disguised perfectly. Inside was the trap, encrypted markers invisible until someone tried to decode them. The moment they did, the trail would lead straight to Monarch, the mastermind behind Olivia. Downstairs, the war room buzzed with controlled tension. Leon stood at the center, issuing clipped orders. Screens displayed real-time logs, network pings, and a central graph, a digital spiderweb lighting up node by node. Ethan was there, feet tucked under him, in the leather chair James had given him, laptop open, eyes sharp. He'd helped design the visual signature that made the bait irresistible. It wasn't just clever, it was poetic. He called it butterfly sting. Suddenly, a trace map flared red. A terminal pinged. They bit, Leon said. The room hushed, then erupted. James returned as the trace finalized. It's not a shell company, Leon said, brows knitting. It's coming from an investment firm, Baxter Capital, Midtown Atlanta. They own tech portfolios, not dev labs. Unless, James said, eyes narrowing, they're laundering data as financial assets. Leon pointed to a secondary trace path. Here's the handoff server. Monarch's behind this IP chain masked by a corporate firewall. James looked around. Then we go analog. The next morning, James stood outside Baxter Capital's 57-story glass tower. No entourage, no press, just him, a black coat and a slim folder under his arm. He strode past reception with the authority of a man who owned the ground he walked on. The receptionist started to speak, then didn't. His eyes said enough. He entered a private elevator with a key card from a discreet Sentinel Tech contact in the financial network. Floor 47, restricted access. The doors opened to gray carpet, abstract art, and silence that smelled of polished steel and rich mahogany. Then movement. A woman appeared at the hallway's end, sharp suit, cold eyes. Behind her, a silver-haired man moved with the calm of someone who'd ruled boardrooms for decades. He was Monarch. Mr. Harper, the man said, almost amused. You don't do subtle, do you? James handed the folder to the woman without a word. Inside, the full digital trail embedded signatures and violated NDAs by Baxter's shell entities. I'm offering a final courtesy, James said. Disband your network, erase everything, or this goes to the Fed's 3 news outlets and the SEC. The man glanced at the folder for a second. You're bluffing. James tossed a second copy onto a glass table. That one's all ready with a lawyer. You have until tonight. The man's smile faded. You have a nephew. Be careful where you shine your light. The jab landed Ethan's race, his age, a weak point in their eyes. James's voice was ice. He's why I shine it. You picked the wrong family to cross. He walked out, leaving the door open like a storm warning. Back at Sentinel Tech, the mood shifted. What started as a cleanup now felt like war's prelude. Ethan sensed it too. He didn't talk much that day, just drew butterflies in dark forests, skyscrapers with cracked, small hands holding lanterns. James saw them all, each one steadying him. That evening, James found Olivia's engagement ring on his porch in a velvet box. No note, just the ring. He opened it slowly, staring at the empty symbol. His phone buzzed. Block number. Hello, James. Olivia's voice was soft, almost tender. You're not supposed to call. I know. But you need to hear this from me. I didn't know they'd target Ethan. I swear, James, I thought it was just data. Clean, no feelings. You were engaged to me, he said. That's not clean. A long pause. I meant it at first. Then I forgot where the lies stopped and the truth started. He said nothing. They're gonna hit soon, she whispered. They won't just ruin you. They'll tear it all down. Employee data, Sentinel, Ethan. Why warn me because I'm not the monster they made me? Then turn yourself in. Testify. Another pause. Goodbye, James. The line went dead. He stood there, the Atlanta sky bleeding red, the box still open in his hand, and realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was legacy. And legacy he knew was defended not with walls, but with fire. That night, Sentinel Tech's senior team met in the basement vault. Screens projected internal protocols. James stood at the head. We go full lockdown, he said. Cut all remote channels, isolate R&D servers, activate the black box protocol. What about Ethan Ellen? The COO asked. James looked at the boy who'd slipped in clutching his sketch pad. He stays close. He's not just a kid anymore. He's part of this. Ethan stepped forward. I got an idea. The room quieted. He showed them his interface map, blending data visualization with behavioral prediction based on internal access anomalies. I call it ShadowNet. If they try moving inside our system again, this'll trace who's working from the inside. Leon raised a brow. Could work. It will, Ethan said simply. James smiled, the first in days. We're not just protecting a company, he said. We're protecting a generation. Ours and his. He looked around at tired, determined faces. Tomorrow we end this. The day began in silence. No alarms, no meetings, just stillness. But for James, it wasn't calm. It was the quiet before the sky splits open. He was at Sentinel Tech before sunrise in a black long sleeve and worn jeans. The boardroom was dim windows, tinted. Every screen was dark except one, Ethan's ShadowNet, pulsing dark blues and silvers, weaving through the company's digital corridors like a ghost. Ethan sat beside him, sipping cocoa. Too young for this, yet steadier than half the adults. His drawings were gone, replaced by code diagrams focus. Want to run the trace when it starts, James asked. Ethan glanced up, serious. Started it 30 minutes ago. James raised an eyebrow. Ethan's fingers tapped a few keys. They're coming. At that moment, Leon's phone buzzed. Then Ellen's. Terminals pinged erratically. Unauthorized logins. Pings from Seoul, Frankfurt, 2 U.S. locations. The attack was layered through global proxies, but ShadowNet caught the internal threads instantly. They're rerouting through cloud APIs, Leon said, voice sharp. Aiming to corrupt our IP library and rewrite ownership logs. They want to erase us from our own servers. Ellen whispered, My God. James leaned forward. Do it. Ethan's fingers moved. The trap snapped shut. On-screen ShadowNet exploded into motion red threads, weaving into white, collapsing into a blinking node. Got the internal IP, Ethan said. It's a senior dev lead at Baxter Capital. And there's another. Olivia's name surfaced. Not just an ex-fiancée, not just a plant. She was still in, still accessing. James exhaled slowly. She didn't back out. Leon's eyes narrowed. What's the play? Let her see what's next. 10 minutes later, Baxter Capital's internal server room went dark. Simultaneously, news outlets received an anonymous leak exposing digital manipulation, shell companies, and ethics violations tied to Baxter's leadership. But James didn't stop there. A limousine pulled up at Baxter's building. James stepped out alone, holding a silver USB drive. He walked past security without resistance. The receptionist avoided his gaze. In the penthouse boardroom, 5 executives waited, faces a mix of defiance and dread. The silver-haired man, Monarch, sat cold and confident, always assuming he was 2 steps ahead. James placed the USB on the table, pushed it forward. Everything you've built is traced. You have 48 hours to resign, confess, and dismantle your illegal infrastructure. Or this goes public. Monarch sneered. You won't win the long game, Harper. Your company might survive, but people like us endure. James leaned in, eyes calm. You're wrong. I'm not playing a long game. I'm lighting a fuse. He walked out. No guards stopped him. The doors closed like a tomb ceiling shut. That evening, back at Sentinel Tech, the senior team gathered in the executive lounge. Nobody spoke much, just sipped coffee, watched news tickers scroll. Baxter's ties unraveled one by one. Tech forums exploded. Federal investigations were rumored to open within days. James sat apart, hands around a warm mug, staring at the Atlanta skyline as the sun set in deep orange. Ethan climbed onto the seat beside him. Quiet, how you feel, James asked. Like I finished a hard puzzle, but I don't know if I like the picture it made. James nodded slowly. That's what truth looks like sometimes. Ugly but necessary. Ethan rested his head on James's arm. You think Mom and Dad would be proud of me? James swallowed the question, hitting deeper than expected. Yeah, he said, because you saw something wrong and didn't walk away. You whispered the truth, even when it was scary. Ethan's eyes closed, tears glistening. I miss them, I know, James said. Me too. They sat as the last light faded. 3 weeks later, Olivia turned herself in. She walked into a federal building alone, hands trembling, but face composed. The courtroom scenes that followed were quiet but electric. She named names, submitted emails, exposed the covert network built to steal from tech visionaries under the guise of investment oversight. She didn't ask for a deal. Monarch revealed as Edward Baxter, CEO of Baxter Capital, faced a harsher fate. Federal agents raided his offices, seizing servers and records. His empire crumbled under indictments for espionage, fraud, and racketeering. His smug confidence shattered as he was led away in cuffs, his name plastered across headlines. Baxter Capital dissolved, its assets frozen, its legacy reduced to a cautionary tale. James didn't attend the trials. He didn't need to. Justice came soft but final, like Ethan's whisper that started it all. One spring morning, James took Ethan to Atlanta's botanical gardens. Months had passed since the tension faded. Sentinel Tech thrived, its systems tighter, its staff forged in fire. Ethan ran ahead through flower beds, laughing, his tight curls bouncing as he darted under a pink blossom arch. James followed slowly, hands in pockets, a content smile tugging his lips. Ethan stopped by a cluster of monarch butterflies on a branch. Look, he called. They're everywhere. James crouched beside him. They migrate thousands of miles, all on instinct. Even after storms, they know where to go. Even when they get lost, Ethan asked. James nodded. Especially then. Ethan held out his hand, and a butterfly landed gently on his palm. They're stronger than they look, he said. James smiled. So are you. They stood there wrapped in silence and wings. For the first time since it all began, James felt something simple: peace. As the breeze stirred the trees, the butterflies rose together, bright, weightless, and free.